Wanting to work on your bike at home and keeping it in tip-top condition is all well and good, but you're going to need the right tools to do so. So here's 9 essential tools that you need to keep it running smoothly. Firstly, I can't recommend enough having a bike workstand to use. Reason being, it supports the bike well, and I do see people occasionally work on their bikes turned upside down. Basically, that doesn't make sense because nothing's logical, and I've seen people basically join chains together in the wrong places because they've routed it through the rear derailleur wrong. So whatever you do, work on your bike the correct way up, but in a stand. At home, I actually use tripod style stands, so something different to this one, what we've got here. Reason I prefer that is I can work on the bike much quicker actually, and I can spin it around, and I don't need something quite as cumbersome perhaps as this. There are a huge variety of workstands available, from a top of the range Park Tool one like this to something homemade like I showed you with an old inner tube. So whatever your budget, there is something out there for you, and please do just get one. So Allen keys or hex wrenches. These days on bikes, they're covered in sockets for them. Years ago we used to have to use spanners, but these days really simple with just a few of them. As for the differences between them, well, you can get multi ones like this, basic key like that, or one there with a plastic hand. The differences are really how often you're going to be using them. So something like this with a plastic handle, it's a lot more comfortable for day in, day out use. What I would advise, if you've got the budget for it, is actually try and look for something that has like a ball head on it. Reason being, a lot of bike parts in places where it's not necessarily that easy to actually reach. So by having something like that, you can still access the socket fine and still be able to undo it. As for sizes, well, you're going to definitely need a 4, a 5 and a 6mm, or most likely anyway. There are a variety of different sizes available, but those are the 3 most common. Now, when you're going out to buy some, look for, say, a 2mm all the way up to a 12mm or possibly a 10. 12mm, that's only used on some free hub bodies. As for what I use, and also what Doddy from GMBN uses, at our home workshops, we actually use the multi-tool Allen keys a lot. Normally it's the closest one to hand, and we're just working on the bikes pretty quickly, so it's a simple, easy job. So TORX keys. These are similar to a hex key in that they're 6-sided, but that's basically where the similarity ends. A TORX key uses more of a point style fitting, and basically you can put a bigger torque through it, and that's really important in the cycle world where we do use some quite high torques, and when you're using a small head, you can actually round off Allen key heads quite easily, whereas a TORX key, it's not quite so simple to do so. Hence the likely introduction of them into the cycle industry where we've got all of those small little fittings. It is possible, however, to actually use an undersized TORX key on one of those sockets. So actually pay a real good deal of attention when tightening them to make sure you're using the right tool size and the right socket size, because you don't want to start rounding off anything. That's never any fun. Of course, if you don't have any TORX fittings on your bike, you can ignore everything I've just said. But be aware, it is coming into the bike world more and more, so it's likely in the future you're going to have to give in, and you're going to need these TORX tools after all. So screwdrivers, make sure you've got a couple of these in your workshop. I always have a flathead one and also a crosshead one. So you can use them on your derailleur limit screws, also on brake calipers to align them, shoe cleats, that kind of thing. And if not, you can always use them around the house, can't you, for a little bit of DIY. So torque wrenches. These are really important actually these days in a home workshop. All of the very best mechanics that I know, they use torque wrenches day in, day out on components. And bearing in mind that they're using exactly the same components day in, day out, that means something. It means that they're not just fitting and forgetting, they're actually taking a lot of care of that. And you should too, because it is your pride and joy after all. Take for instance, if you were to over tighten your handlebar stem, that could crush the steerer tube of the fork, and in turn, it could actually break both components. And in the case of this bike, with an integrated bar and stem, it could break all three. So please use one. As for sizes, whole heap of varieties from this big one down to quite a small one. Sometimes you even get them free with a bike when you purchase it. How cool is that? Different sizes obviously is going to give you a lot more leverage. So this one here can go up to a lot more than this one or this one, naturally. And this is more suitable for things like bottom brackets, cassette lock rings, that kind of thing. But if you're only going to get one, make sure you just get a small one like one of these two, because that's going to be good for your handlebar stem, seat post, that kind of thing. Final little tip actually, I always leave my torque wrench in the resting state, so basically on the dial at 0. Reason being, the spring then is untensioned, and I hope that in the future it's always going to give me a really accurate reading. Again, I don't know if there's any science behind that, but it's good for my mind. And lastly, stick to the manufacturer's torque settings. It is there for a reason. Pumps and tyre levers. But today, I'm not going to talk to you about tyre pressure or anything like that. I'm going to leave that up to Simon Richardson. It's his specialist subject after gear ratios and chainstay lengths. Exciting stuff, that. We've got loads of videos anyway on tyre pressure. But what I am going to preach to you today about is a floor pump, or what someone retro like me still calls a track pump. They do come in a variety of shapes and sizes, but largely all do look the same. Reason why I recommend it is that it's much easier and quicker and simpler to inflate your tyres by using one. You can put your whole body weight behind it. Plus, if it comes with a gauge on it, you can get that desired tyre pressure as recommended by our very own Simon Richardson. On the end of the hose, there is also a head to inflate the valve, obviously. My preferred is one that does both Schrader and Presta type valves. So if anyone pops around who's got a Schrader valve on their bike, I can easily pump it up for them. One last bit to look out for when buying a floor pump is if you're using tubeless tyres, try and go for something like this. This actually has a booster chamber in it. So what does that mean? It means you can lock off that chamber, inflate a load of air into it, attach the hose to your valve, and then release the air out in one swift movement, and bang. That banging noise is going to be the bead of your tubeless tyre seating in the rim, and it's going to save you from pumping away with a standard track pump, looking like a maniac, and anyone walking by seeing you look like one too. So tyre levers, they're actually really often overlooked and people just go for something really basic. Maybe you're not as particular as me, but I think it's worth the effort. They come in all different shapes and sizes. So something like this from Topeak, shuttle lever, it's actually a bit longer than a standard lever. You can see one attached to it there. It's long, it's stiff. You're going to get some good leverage to remove a tight, stubborn tyre. However, the little lip there may not fit underneath a really close bead and rim interface. In that case, I actually, a few years ago, got given some of these Continental ones as a freebie somewhere, I can't remember, and they still work really well because they're nice and thin, and I can put them underneath those tight beads. There is a bit more flex in them, and at times I have been worried that this prized possession of mine that I've had for years is going to snap, but so far, so good. Whatever you do though, just make sure you buy some quality levers, because changing bike tyres is part of cycling. Pliers and cable cutters. Firstly, pliers. Go for a set of long nose ones. That way you can hold any gear cables or brake cables in tension whilst tightening up the clamp bolt. Of course, if you're using electronic gears or hydraulic brakes, you're not going to need them for that, but still they'll probably come in handy for something or other along the lines. And then cable cutters. These are so important for a cyclist. I can't say that enough. People sometimes look at me like I'm mad when I say that, but they really are that important. Reason being, they are specific for small diameter cables, and anything else just won't give you a smooth, clean cut. And that's really important when you're cutting brake cables and gear cables, specifically the outers, because you want that cable to be as smooth and flush as possible when you put it up to a ferrule or inside of the housing of a component. They do last as well for a very long time. The set I've got at home are about 20 years old, so nearly as old as me. No, in fact, they're nowhere near as old as me, but they're still going strong because I've only ever used them on bike cables. So make sure you get some. Of course, if you're using hydraulic hoses, then no, you don't need to worry about that. But in all seriousness, then you're going to need a hydraulic cutter anyway. So you're going to have to get something. So you're going to get to a point where you need to replace your chain and also your cassette. But firstly, let's look at a chain tool. Well, what is it? Well, it basically allows you to split and rejoin your chain. They come in all different sizes, but largely they do look the same, don't they? Same sort of shape there. What you buy really does obviously depend on your budget. However, Campagnolo, they actually recommend using one of their own chain tools if you're splitting and refitting one of their chains. Reason being, the pins on their chains actually require a lot more force to push out than other brands of chain. At home, I have used my own old chain tool to remove one, so a non-Campagnolo one, but basically stick with Campagnolo's advice, it is there for a reason. So to remove your cassette, you're going to need one of these, a chain whip, one of these, an adjustable spanner, and this, the cassette lock ring tool. So the cassette lock ring tools, they come in different shapes to fit different splines of the cassette lock rings. So Shimano and SRAM, they actually use the same spline fitting. That's all well and good. Campagnolo, they use a different fitting, and there's all sorts of other old, most of them are no longer used fittings too, but basically get the right one for your bike and you'll be good to go. So how does it work? Well, get your chain whip and wrap it around at about the 4th sprocket down, so that's the 4th largest one on the rear, and then with your cassette tool, insert that into the lock ring and then adjust the adjustable spanner to fit, and then push downwards on the adjustable spanner in an anti-clockwise motion whilst applying pressure in a clockwise motion on your chain whip, and you'll see that undo. And then to refit the cassette, it's simply a case of lining up the cassette splines with the free hub body and then locking the cassette lock ring to the desired Newton meters. Of course, using the torque wrench that we already spoke about. And lastly, the adjustable spanner. Yep, we just spoke about that just now. So you could use that to tighten up your lock ring if you don't have a torque wrench for it. But if you do, just go gentle, because something like this is about 12 inches long. Get quite a bit of leverage behind that and you could easily strip a lock ring, or worse still, your free hub body. Then you're in trouble. Then you'll have to ask me in one of my tech clinics what to do. In all seriousness though, there are a few different uses for it. Depending on your pedal type, you could use it instead of a flat 15mm spanner to release the axle, and maybe also to straighten up a chain ring if one was to get bent. After all, if it's bent, you're going to need to replace it anyway, so with an adjustable spanner, well, you could save yourself a little bit of money in the short term. But anyway, it's quite a cheap tool just to get in your workshop anyway. Now, as ever, let me know your essential tools for home maintenance down there in the comments. I'll be reading them and I'll be seeing what I've missed out at home. I don't reckon I've missed out on anything at home though, because wait until you see my garage tour. Yeah, it's going to be a long one, that. Now, also remember to check out the GCN shop where you can get goodies like this apron, essential as well for your home workshop. Maybe we should reshoot this video, I could wear it. Also, remember to like and share this video with your friends. And for another great maintenance video, click just down here.